Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm so glad you joined us. And hello, Mauricio. It's always such a pleasure teaming up with you for these discussions.
Glad to be here, Edna. Hello, everyone listening. I'm excited to dive into today's topic with you. Thanks for being here.
So, Mauricio, everywhere we look, AI seems to be in the headlines. But wait, what even is AI? People keep throwing the term around, and it feels like definitions are all over the place. How would you even define it?
Great question. AI, or artificial intelligence, is really just an umbrella term for a mix of technologies that enable machines to perform tasks we typically associate with human intelligence. Things like holding a conversation, recognizing a face, learning, or even solving a problem. But I think this is where it gets tricky. There's a ton of confusion, even among experts.
I've noticed that. It seems like no one agrees on what it actually is.
That's because AI covers such a wide range of tech. You've got some people, advocates for artificial general intelligence, or AGI, who believe AI is on the verge of becoming, well, practically human in its capabilities. Like they think it's going to solve massive problems or fundamentally change the world.
And then there are skeptics, right? People like Gary Marcus who call out its limits and question these bold claims.
Exactly. Skeptics point out how many of these tools are glorified math engines. They argue that we might be overhyping what AI can really do. Like, for instance, take the attention-grabbing advancements in large language models.
It's like ChatGPT, right? Everyone's been talking about it.
ChatGPT is this amazing tool that can generate human-like text. It can answer your questions, write essays, help you code. It's wild. But it's also where people get tripped up. Some say it's intelligent, like human-level smart. Others argue it's nothing more than a massive pattern recognizer. ChatGPT just mimics human language based on the billions, and I mean billions of text data it's been trained on. So it creates an illusion of understanding without actually thinking. There's debate on whether that's intelligence at all.
It's fascinating to see experts go so far in opposite directions over the same technology.
I think what this really highlights is a bigger clash between perspectives. And that confusion, honestly, it's everywhere, even amongst the companies building this stuff.
That's so true, Mauricio. There's confusion everywhere. But what do you think it is about AI that fuels such strong conflicting opinions? Why does it divide people so much?
That's such a layered question. So let me start with this. People don't really view AI in a vacuum, right? Cultural biases, industry interests, and, that human tendency to see AI as more alive or human-like than it actually is. All of that plays a role. It's like everyone's approaching AI with their own lens or agenda sometimes.
That explains why it feels like these debates are so personal. People aren't just discussing technology. They're bringing their own worldview to the table. And yet these voices also influence public perception, right?
And check this out. Elon Musk and Timnit Gebru, for instance, are like polar opposites. Musk, he's all about the bold claims. You might have heard him talk about how AI could eventually surpass human intelligence, transform society, or even become a threat to humanity. It's super optimistic, but also kind of terrifying.
While Gebru focuses on the here and now, the real-world consequences of AI, like the impact on equality or systemic biases, it's such a stark contrast, isn't it?
And these competing views don't just shape debates, they influence policies, regulations, and how companies market AI. It's like everyone's fighting to control the narrative of what AI should be or do.
This reminds me of a project I worked on with a client a few years ago. They were trying to implement AI in their strategy, but the board, the decision makers, couldn't agree on what AI even meant to their business. By the end, it was like herding cats.
I can totally picture that. Because if you ask 10 people what AI is, you'll probably get 10 completely different answers. That lack of clarity makes it even harder. And let's not forget companies pushing their own agendas. It's like throwing fuel on the fire.
Mauricio, with so many different opinions, do you think it's even possible or crucial for society to settle on a shared understanding of what AI really is? Or does that not matter as much as it seems?
It matters. See, when we don't have a common understanding of what AI is or isn't, it just creates this giant mess, Misunderstanding breeds misinformation, and more importantly, it messes with how this technology is perceived and even regulated.
That's a strong point. And you're saying this confusion isn't just academic or theoretical, it actually has tangible effects?
Exactly. Take something as simple as what AI powers, like content recommendations, credit algorithms, even healthcare. When people misunderstand its capabilities, it can lead to misplaced trust or distrust. For example, some assume that AI stands, guys, how is he? The AI systems in case in healthcare could make infallible diagnoses, but then when errors happened, like a misdiagnosis, it became a blow to the whole idea of AI itself. Like that kind of confusion, it sets us back.
I can see how those misunderstandings would make people hesitant, even fearful of letting AI into their lives.
And it goes deeper. Without clarity, even regulators don't know what they're working with. Like they might create over-the-top rules or fail to address real risks AI brings. Either way, we're left with a system that doesn't work as well as it could. No winners there.
It almost sounds like a chain reaction, with one misconception leading to larger systemic issues.
And what's wild is this isn't hypothetical. We've already seen it play out. Misaligned expectations, unclear policies, and public apprehension. That all stems from not setting a solid foundation on what AI actually is.
So in a way, we don't just need to stick to what's flashy or trendy with AI. We need to get the basics right before everything else.
Clarity gives us a roadmap for creating guidelines, scaling the tech, and keeping people informed. Without it, we're kind of flying blind here.
Speaking of how clarity shapes perceptions, Mauricio, ChatGPT really seemed to grab everyone's attention when it launched. Why do you think that was such a turning point for how people see AI?
ChatGPT changed the game completely. Before it, AI was mostly this vague technical thing that lived in labs or maybe behind some apps we all used. But ChatGPT, it made AI feel approachable. Like suddenly everyone could actually interact with it. You could ask it anything and it answered like you were chatting with a super knowledgeable friend.
It's interesting how that sense of accessibility really changed the way people thought about AI, but at the same time, it also seems to divide people even more, doesn't it?
I mean, you've got people who see these tools as borderline magical, this idea that AI is demonstrating some kind of intelligence, right? But then there's this other camp that's like, wait a second. All it's doing is predicting the next word based on patterns it learned. So this debate about understanding versus mimicry, it's huge.
That mimicry piece is fascinating. It reminds me of some of the philosophical questions we've faced throughout AI's history. Like, if a machine behaves intelligently, does that mean it actually understands what it's doing?
That's one of the big ongoing debates. AI like GPT-4 is trained on this massive amount of text, basically everything from books to the internet. So it's insanely good at predicting human-like responses. But here's the catch. None of that means it's actually thinking or understanding in the way you and I do. It's more like supercharged autocomplete on steroids. And yet, because it's so sophisticated, it's so easy to look at it and go, wow, this has to be intelligent.
It's funny. I used to joke that AI seemed like a really diligent but clueless consultant. It would give you answers, but, had no idea what you were really asking.
And I think a lot of the public fell into that same trap at first. People saw tools like ChatGPT solve problems, write essays, or even code something, and they thought, oh, this must get it. But to go back to your analogy, just like that consultant, it's great at following patterns and instructions, but it's missing the bigger picture. It's operating without true understanding.
It really puts the whole hype around AI into perspective when you think about it like that.
And what makes it even more complicated is that the conversation itself has become so polarized. Like, you've got AI enthusiasts who are fully convinced this tech is about to revolutionize life as we know it, and then skeptics pushing back just as hard, saying it's all smoke and mirrors. It's honestly a battle of extremes.
Mauricio, speaking of all those polarized views on AI, let's dive into artificial general intelligence, or AGI. It's been a buzzword for years now, but it also feels like there's so much contention around it. Why has AGI become, such a lightning rod for debate?
Great question, Edna. AGI is kind of like the unicorn of AI. It's this idea of building a machine that can do pretty much anything a human can, right? It's been around since, 2007 when Shane Legg coined the term, but the concept itself goes way back. The tricky part isn't just defining it, but also agreeing on whether we're anywhere close to it.
And the disagreements go beyond just its definition, right? I've seen researchers pretty much at each other's throats about AGI claims lately. What's going on there?
Let me give you an example. Microsoft researchers released this infamous paper in 2023 about GPT-4, calling it a spark of AGI. They were saying, look, this model shows creative reasoning. Like it can write a poem as part of a math proof. Sounds impressive, right? But then you've got critics like Emily Bender who flat out reject this. She calls all of it fan fiction masquerading as research.
That's bold, but I can see why people would push back. AGI seems like such a monumental claim to make.
What makes it worse is that there's so much context missing. Was GPT-4 trained on similar examples? Was it just repeating patterns it had seen before? These are valid questions that skeptics demand answers to. And honestly, sometimes it feels like both sides are speaking completely different languages. One group sees sparks of intelligence and the other sees glorified autocomplete.
You know, this debate really reminds me of my marathon training. It's always a balance between pushing for peak performance and not letting overconfidence lead to injury. Couldn't the same logic apply to AI?
Because overhyping AGI does come with dangers. If people or even companies get too caught up in the we're so close narrative, we might overlook the basics or even create systems that we don't fully understand. And on the flip side, dismissing every step forward as just smoke and mirrors, that's equally damaging. It stifles innovation.
It's such a tricky line to walk. Push too hard and risk losing trust, or hold back and risk missing out on progress.
That tension pretty much defines the AGI debate. And you know, despite the noise, it's not a bad thing we're discussing this now. The stakes are high. We're not just talking about tech, but what kind of future we want to build.
Mauricio, building on what you said about the stakes in defining our future, Anthropic's latest findings with their AI model bring an interesting twist to the discussion, but it also seems to raise more questions than answers. What do these developments tell us about how we should define intelligence in AI?
Anthropic's model, Claude 3, showed these intriguing patterns during their testing, like specific neurons lighting up when prompted with abstract concepts. They even found one pattern that obsessed over the Golden Gate Bridge, like to the point where it included it in answers, even when it made zero sense. It's fascinating. And also makes you wonder, are these models really thinking or just processing input in unexpected ways?
That's such a good point. It feels like there's this fine line between being impressed by the outputs and actually believing these models understand what they're doing.
So, here's the thing. AI's intelligence isn't like ours. Anthropic's research gives us a glimpse into how these systems process information, but even they admit it's not equivalent to human reasoning. It's more about recognizing patterns and relationships in the data it's trained on, not applying conscious understanding. We're projecting human traits like reasoning onto something that works very differently under the hood.
That makes me wonder, when you hear people call these models intelligent, are we just oversimplifying because it's easier than unpacking all this complexity?
That's what makes the debate so tricky. Terms like intelligence create this binary thinking, intelligent or not intelligent. But the real answer, it's a spectrum. These models can demonstrate what looks like reasoning in specific contexts. However, they're still fundamentally limited by their design. We've got to stop thinking of AI as needing to fit into a yes or no box about intelligence.
So how do we even begin to talk about their potential if we can't define what they actually are?
Well, we need nuanced perspectives. These models do extraordinary things without crossing into general intelligence. And think of it this way. When Claude 3 flawlessly codes or solves a math problem, it's impressive. But call it what it is. Advanced statistical pattern matching, not free thought. Admitting that doesn't downplay the technology's usefulness. It's just being honest about what it can and cannot do.
That honesty is refreshing, actually. I tried using AI for meal planning the other week. I thought, hey, I'll get customized grocery lists aligned with my yoga diet. Instead, I ended up with a week of tofu, kale, and enough almond milk to last a lifetime. Let's just say tuning AI to understand balanced eating is still a work in progress.
But honestly, that's where AI shines and struggles, right? It can optimize tasks, like helping people keep up with meal planning, but it's no personal chef. These tools enhance efficiency without replacing human judgment. And when you approach them that way, they're powerful allies for everyday life. That's the real value.
Speaking of the history behind these tools we're trying to use, realistically, Mauricio, did you know that the term artificial intelligence was actually coined back in 1955 by John McCarthy? It's fascinating that something so buzzworthy today has origins from nearly 70 years ago. But I wonder, how do you think those foundational ideas shape how we view AI now?
McCarthy's vision was really ambitious. He and this group of top researchers at Dartmouth set out to basically define intelligence and, get this, to figure out how to replicate it in machines. They thought, hey, if we just crack the code of how humans learn and reason, computers can basically do the same. It's like saying, give us 8 weeks and we'll revolutionize the future. Spoiler alert, they ran out of time.
8 weeks to replicate intelligence. That's ambitious to say the least. But wasn't there disagreement even back then about how to approach AI?
In fact, they couldn't even agree on what to call it at first. McCarthy eventually stuck with artificial intelligence. But others wanted terms like automata studies or even engineering psychology. It's funny because those debates mirror what we see today, arguments over terminology and methodology.
And those early divisions didn't just stop with the name, right? There was also a massive split in how researchers thought AI should actually work.
That divide shaped everything moving forward. On one side, you had symbolic AI, basically rule-based systems where they tried to hard-code intelligence. Think of it like writing out step-by-step instructions for every task. And on the other side, neural networks, more of a let the machine figure it out approach by recognizing patterns in data. This method took decades to really take off, but today neural networks are everywhere and driving most of the AI we use.
Yet even now, that tension between symbolic AI and neural networks feels pretty relevant. It's like those early debates became a blueprint for modern discussions.
Definitely. It's like history repeating itself. The Dartmouth team laid the groundwork, but they couldn't agree on a single path forward. And in a way, that disagreement gave rise to the diversity of approaches we see in AI research today. It shaped the whole field.
It's fascinating that a summer research project could spark such a lasting legacy and at the same time so much division.
And understanding that legacy helps make sense of why AI still feels so fragmented. But hold on, this is just scratching the surface of how those early ideas connect to the giant leaps and controversies we see today.
Mauricio, thinking about those early legacies, I can't help but consider Alan Turing's contributions. His Turing test, do you think it still holds relevance in today's AI landscape?
That's a fantastic question. So let's rewind a bit to his 1950 paper. Turing basically said, instead of getting stuck on defining thinking or intelligence, let's focus on behavior. If a machine could convincingly simulate human responses to questions, then for all intents and purposes, we could say it's intelligent. This became the Turing test, also called the imitation game.
That focus on behavior rather than inner processes. It's such a simple yet profound idea, but has it stood the test of time?
That's where the debates get spicy. The Turing test was groundbreaking, not just as a technical challenge, but as a philosophical one. But critics today argue it's incomplete. Like, sure, a chatbot can fool someone into thinking it's human, but does that really mean it's intelligent? It's kind of like passing the test by trickery.
And that's the crux of many modern criticisms, isn't it? AI might mimic human behavior convincingly, but when you ask about deeper understanding or reasoning, well, that's where the cracks start to show.
And, critics like Emily Bender have pointed out that just because something acts human-like doesn't mean it's thinking like a human. It's more like statistical mimicry. If we rely solely on behavior, we're setting ourselves up to mistake imitation for true understanding.
It's ironic, though, right? The test was meant to simplify how we evaluate intelligence, but it seems to have created even more confusion in the long run.
Totally ironic. And what's wild? In some ways, the same debates we had in Turing's time about what intelligence actually means are still raging today, except now they're amplified by the rise of large language models like GPT-4. People are asking, is this reasoning or just an insanely advanced illusion?
It almost feels like the Turing test has become a mirror, reflecting our own misunderstandings about intelligence rather than solving them.
It's like Turing gave us a lens, but not the answers. And even as we analyze modern AI, we're still struggling to define whether a machine can truly understand, or if it's all just clever math under the hood.
Mauricio, as we think about modern AI's strengths and gaps, like those brought up by the Turing test, it makes me wonder, when we talk about AGI, with machines aiming for human-like intelligence, do you think that grand aspiration actually matches what society truly needs right now?
That's such a great question to wrap this up. Honestly, AGI is often this futuristic beacon, right? You've got scientists, tech visionaries, kind of like Elon Musk or Demis Hassabis, who see it as solving climate change, curing diseases, or even helping humans expand into space. But, the here and now doesn't exactly look like that. Society's needs are a lot more grounded. We're talking about fairness in hiring, improving healthcare access, or simply making AI that works without reinforcing biases.
It's like these AGI dreams are skipping over the very real issues we face today. So in your view, do you think these dreams are more helpful or harmful?
I'd say both. Helpful because they drive innovation. But harmful? Absolutely. Especially if that high-level vision distracts us from fixing very real, very immediate problems. Look at all the debates over bias in AI, for instance. Systems are being deployed today that influence our jobs, our loans, our lives. Yet, some developers get so caught up in chasing AGI that they forget to address these flaws first.
Right. It kind of echoes what we talked about in earlier episodes, those unchecked biases baked into AI systems. And critics like Emily Bender and Timnit Gebru have been pivotal voices here calling out tech companies for ignoring those crucial issues, haven't they?
They've really shown a spotlight on the trade-offs we're making. And their critiques aren't just about the tech, it's about defining ethical priorities. Are we using billions of dollars to create truly useful tools for humanity, or just chasing a dream of machines acting like us? That question forces us to rethink how we use global resources and talents.
It's a tough balance, isn't it? On one hand, we need visionaries to push the boundaries of what's possible, but on the other, we can't lose sight of accountability for how this technology affects people today.
It's a balancing act, Edna. And I think finding that balance starts with acknowledging the tension in these conversations. The techno-utopian dreams can inspire us, but they also risk paving over the realities of equity, access, or unintended harms. We can't afford shortcuts when the stakes are this high.
So, would you say the key is focusing on building AI intentionally for now, rather than obsessing over what could be decades away?
Intentionality is the magic word here. Let's tackle today's problems head-on, like crafting unbiased loan algorithms or making AI truly inclusive, before we start dreaming about machines colonizing Mars. It's about context, priorities, and really responsibility.
I love that. AI isn't magic, and it isn't going to be our savior. It's just another tool. And it's our job to wield it responsibly. Mauricio, for me, this entire series has boiled down to that fundamental takeaway. The future of AI isn't about the tech itself, but about how we choose to shape it.
Couldn't have said it better, Edna. And to everyone tuning in, thanks for coming with us on this journey. AI is complicated, messy, and full of paradoxes, but it's also an opportunity. A tool that our choices define.
It's been such a fantastic discussion throughout this episode. Mauricio, thank you for sharing your incredible insights, and to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this exploration of AI's complexities.
Thanks, everyone. It was a great conversation with you, Edna. We'll catch you next time. Take care.